Hello and welcome. This is lecture 17 and today's topic is going to be based on a book which I wrote a few years ago. It's called Your Days Are Numbered. Looks a bit morbid with the gravestone there, because most of the content of this book is actually about deaths. This book came about with the discovery of a particular Gematria, which I'll put on the board for you, and it led to me researching more of similar. So the one that I found was looking at Guy Fawkes Night. And in England, anybody living abroad might not know what Guy Fawkes Night is. Guy Fawkes Night is the day when a guy called Guy Fawkes, that wasn't actually his real name, he and many others were plotting to blow up the House of Parliament with gunpowder, putting the gunpowder in the basement, and he was caught, and he and a few others of the gang were put to death in a rather gruesome way. And every year on the 5th of November, this is celebrated with fireworks and bonfires. It's often called Bonfire Night. Many people buy their own fireworks, but there are often big firework displays in parks and various places, and on that one day, but it actually spreads over probably about 2 weeks or more. People are lighting fireworks and bonfires a week or two beforehand, and continues afterwards. They go to each other's houses, and it's still celebrated to this day, even though it took place in the 17th century. And you can actually watch a slideshow of my Gematria on this particular topic on my channel. You can search for that on Guy Fawkes Night. So we'll put Guy Fawkes Night and Guy Fawkes Night, and I work out that using the placement value, I will get 176. Use 7, use 21. Going through each of the placement values, so that's the PV. And now the actual date is November the 5th. And that happens every single night, every single year, Guy Fawkes Night, 5th of November or November the 5th. And that is also 176. Now when I saw that, I thought that was very interesting. Here we've got an event, and it tells us with the date which it occurs. Of course, there are different ways of writing the date. You just heard me say 5th of November, November the 5th. If I can write 5th of November, I can write the 5th of November, so that's the third way of writing it. So there's actually 3 ways of writing a date, and if I incorporate the year, so it becomes a bit more complex. So I'm just going to discuss that now, just to give you an idea of how it works. So I was trying to see if I could tally events, connect events to the date in which they occurred. I was using a quite a thick book on the history of the 20th century, and it was going through like newspaper events that around the world, different events. But most of the events that I picked out were catastrophic events, whether they were disasters like the Fukushima a nuclear disaster. I'll give that the one in a minute. There was plane crashes, colliding of 2 planes. Challengers goes up into space and blows up, and unfortunate events that took place, and I show how those events tally with the date in which they occur. And at the end of this book, I give a probability, a chapter on probability on what would be an estimated probability that I would be able to produce all these events, which there are some, there's well over, I think there's over 200 actually, I'm not quite sure exactly. Some years I give 1 or 2 events, 3 events sometimes, some just 1 event, but I go through almost every year. In fact, I go through to 2000 and can't find it. This is 2000. There's quite a few in this one year. 2011, That's probably when I was writing the book. Well, by 2012 I wrote it. So 2011 I've got probably about 13 different events just in that 1 year. But normally during the 20th century I'm just grabbing 1 or 2, sometimes 3 events. But the book starts off actually all the way back to Leonardo da Vinci, which is the first example that I give. I'll write that one down soon, as you haven't put in my notes. But that's 1519, 2nd of May. Leonardo da Serparo da Vinci dies today in Clos Luce. That was his full name, right? Leonardo di Serpiro, can't pronounce it. Piero da Vinci dies today in Clos Luce. That equals 477. And that is the same Gematria as 2nd of May 2519. So that corresponds to his date. And Leonardo is 84, equals Mona Lisa. I thought that was quite interesting because that in itself, Leonardo equals 84, and probably the most famous of his paintings is the Mona Lisa, is also 84. I've got a connection not in this book, another book which I've started writing on artists, where I connect his name to the Last Supper, which is also one of his most famous paintings, and that actually began a whole series of looking into other artists and if they can connect them to paintings that they have done, and that's the subject of another book. But this book is about dates and events. So that's what I started off with, was Guy Fawkes Night. So let me just explain about writing of dates. A date we can have, like we had the 5th of November, this was 5th of November, and then I had the 5th of November, and I have November the 5th. So, as I said, we have 3 ways of writing a date without the year. But if you want to describe an actual event that's taken place in the past, not like Guy Fawkes Night, which is a yearly event, but an event that's taken place in the past, you need to have the year. And the year, let's give an example, as I was doing the 20th century, like 1976. Well, that can be written as 1976, or it could be written as the number 1976. There are obviously more words, so there'll be 2 ways of writing the year: 1976 or 1976. So therefore you would have 6 ways of writing the date, because you could have either of these 3 with either of the 2 ways of writing the year. So that's 6 ways. There's another 2 ways in which you can write the date, commonly used for quick way of showing a date. This would be the 5th of the 11th in the English way. America puts the month before the day. In England they put the day 5th of November 1976. So I would write 5, that could be 5, 11, and then I could write the year in 2 different ways. So I would have 5/11/1976 or 5/11/1976, and I'll have another 2 ways of writing a date, giving me a total of 8 ways of writing a date. And that's important when you're trying to look at the statistical or the probability of actually connecting an event to a date, because you've already started off with 8 ways of writing that date. But then you've got to say to yourself, well, how many ways do I write an event? How could I word that? And there could be quite a few ways of writing an event. You could maybe have 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe 15 odd ways of writing an event. The way I wrote this book, it wasn't that obviously I looked at the 8 ways of writing the date, but I didn't write 100 ways of writing an event, because I don't have that sort of time, nor do I do this with a computer. So usually after about 3 or 4, 5 ways of writing an event, I found a connection. It didn't take me long. some took me longer, maybe up to maybe 8 or 9, maybe even 10 ways of trying to write an event, how it took place. And I'll give you an example why that might be the case, that there are different ways of writing an event. But with that, then you've got these 8 dates, 8 ways of writing a date, and you've got maybe, let's call it 10 ways of writing an event, and you've got to see what's the likelihood of all those events connecting to each other with the dates in which they occur. And it's not an absolute likelihood that you're going to find a connection. It's why would you get with 8 numbers and you've got another 10 numbers? Why would they actually equal the first 8 numbers that you've got, the dates? I estimated a probability of 3. Sorry, not 3, 0.3. In other words, about a third. And since my record of hitting the actual date, matching these up, was around about 95%, the probability of me finding all these dates matching, all these events matching with dates, 95% hits, is a very, very tiny number. It's very small. You couldn't get it in your calculator. I think it's about 1 over 3 to the power of 95, something like that. So I do a more vigorous analysis of probability using more advanced mathematics in my book, Beyond Science, which is not in print at the moment, though I've basically finished the writing of it. It's at least twice this thick. It's over 500 pages. This is about 200. So it's more than twice the thickness of this. So now I go through 207 scientists and I show how they associate, not just to what they invent, but many other things within their inventions or discoveries they make. So, okay. So I'll give you a few examples just to give you an idea. I'll give you the Fukushima one I've got here. I'm going to put that down. Actually, I've got another black pen here. So we've got Fukushima nuclear, like a small c, nuclear reactor disaster. So those are the words I used, and that equals 358. And the date to which it occurred was the 11th of March 2011, and those are the words I used. There were sometimes I actually got the hit almost within a few tries. 11th of March 2011, and that equals 358. You can check that out. Using the placement value again. In this book, I use almost all the time placement value, and I think that's quite significant that I'm restricting it almost entirely to the placement value, not hovering, because that brings in another parameter in the probability calculation. So here we got the event, Fukushima nuclear disaster. We could have put the nuclear disaster of Fukushima, adding the word of. Now that's the way you get various ways of writing event. They have to be English-wise grammatically correct, otherwise that's no good. But it has to make sense. The 11th of March 2011. It wouldn't work out if I put the 11th of March 2011. It wouldn't work out if I put March the 11th 2011 or 2011. So of the 8 ways of writing the date, it only fits with this particular one. Another example is Michael Jackson. Now, interesting enough, I was working on this when the court case was going on about who actually killed Michael Jackson, and by my calculation, it came out to be the doctor. So the words I used, I won't write it down, but wrote Michael Joseph Jackson, his middle name is Joseph, Michael Joseph Jackson is killed by his doctor, and that came to 481. And then the 25th of June 2009 came to 481. That was the day on which he died. I have another one connected to him. Michael Jackson dies of propofol intoxication, which is what killed him, and that's 448. 25th of June 2009 is also 408. Now there are two different ways of writing the date there. For the first one I use the 25th of June 2009, and for the second one I use 25th of June 2009. I took off the word the. So instead of writing the 25th, I just put 25th of June, using one of the 8 ways of writing the dates. So, and I got the connection of Michael Jackson dies of propofol intoxication. A related one, because as I do in my book on Beyond Science, I had other things of interest. So this one I've got in the book, Michael Jackson, I just put MJ. Michael Jackson, the King of Pop. The King of Pop equals 266. I've got a similar one in this book about Elvis Presley and his death, and he was a King of Rock, something like that. So and that equals 266 equals propofol. Get it spelling right. Intoxication. So I've linked his name and who he became, Michael Jackson, the King of Pop, to the very thing that killed him, which was propofol intoxication, 266. Another one. This one you should know. Stephen Paul, that's his middle name. Stephen Paul Jobs. Apple. Oh dear. That's my Apple. Go back to school. Apple founder dies. Is 351. The 5th of October 2011. 2011 equals 351. I tell you, after you're doing a few of these, and you keep hitting them, and you sort of wonder, wow, what's going on here? That's why I call it world discoveries. It's just quite amazing how the English. Okay, you find links. I've got Michael Jackson, King of Pop equals propofol intoxication. But when you start linking up dates with people's deaths, it starts on a bit of a shudder inside you. Your life is like, there's destiny here. There is a map within the English language. It's all mapped out, people's life, events that are going to happen. I consider them to be not definite, fated events. I see them as possible scenarios that are likely to happen due to the name that you've got. In other words, from birth, from the time you're given your name. In fact, although I haven't written a book on this subject, I could probably do so. I have accumulated quite a few dates for births. In fact, that came from Elvis, because I believe it was Elvis Presley, found a connection between his name and the date on which he was born, just using Gematria. Got Elvis here. He takes a bit of space because some interesting Gematrias with him. Here I've got it's somewhat different. He was born in 1935, and 1935 equals 228. 228, the word 228 equals 307. And that's the same as the date Elvis Presley is born. So that just connects him to the year. But I started working out not famous people, people that I know, the day in which they were born, showing they were connected. And I had to sometimes include either within, so and so is born in hospital, or the name of the hospital, or born at home in London or New York or something like that. I had to add some information about where they were born before I could actually connect them to the date on which they were born. So let me just finish off what we were doing here. So we've got Stephen Paul Jobs, gives us the full name, Apple founder, what he did, what his main mission in life, let's say, dies, and that corresponds to the 5th of October 2011. But if you take the words Stephen Paul Jobs, that equals 181. And if you take the 5th of October, which was the day on which you died, without the year, that also equals 181. So he's connected to that particular day as well. One wonders whether that date, the 5th of October, had any other significance to him during his life. I can't answer that one because I don't know. But let's move on to a few more examples, and then we're going to discuss a little bit about death per se. So there was an interesting, we don't get many pile-ups on the motorways in England, but this is one that took place in 2011. So we've got the M5 multiple car accident. And again, there's a few ways of writing this event. Kills 7 today. Quite often I put the word today in it as another way of writing it. So the M5 in different events. The M5 multiple car accident kills 7 today, and that equals 470. You can see why you can get maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ways, maybe even more in certain circumstances of writing an event. Sometimes it's very precise and restricted to what you can write, and that equals the 6th of November. I just put no for short. November 2011, and that also equals 470. So the M5 multiple car accident kills 7 today, the 6th of November 2011. So quite precise. Where it was a multiple car accident, and the exact number of people that were killed, and that gives us the same value as the date. I've got just one more to do, just give you an example. I think for some reason I've given all these from the year 2011, which is I think one of the last sections in the book. So, vodka, one of you can guess what this is going to be about. Vodka kills Amy Winehouse, aged 20, and age is pretty important when you're dying young, so I found this going to be 27, that's how old she was, equals 437, and again the date, July the 23rd, 2011. And that equals 437. So, we have got many examples in this book. We've got one here, let's say, about the assassination attempt of Margaret Thatcher. Attempted assassination of Margaret Thatcher, 451. No, it's not. An IRA bomb explodes in the Grand Hotel in Brighton, 451. And that's not a date connection. That's connected to what took place, right? Attempted assassination of Margaret Thatcher, 451. An IRA bomb explodes in the Grand Hotel in Brighton, 451. Right, so the aim was to kill Margaret Thatcher. 451, that's the number that connects the two. 451 equals 253. The words 451 equals 253, and that equals British Prime Minister. Quite interesting. So now, if I add 451 to the 253, so I've got 451 equals 253, add those two numbers together, 451 and 254, 253 plus 451, I get 704. And that is the same gematria as attempted assassination of British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. The last one I've got there, but old Margie was more than a match for them. So, interesting enough, Margaret is 83, Thatcher is 83, so she equals, the first name of her name equals the last name. I don't know if she's got a middle name. And that equals IRA bomber, the same as 83. So, she was certainly an equivalent to that, but she wasn't killed, thank God. So, okay, that takes us to a little bit about the idea of death. So I'm going to use another pen because my board is getting blackened. Let's try blue. That new pen is quite strong. So we have, I just want to show one or two. The word date is 30, and that's the same as day. The day and the date is same sort of meaning. An end equals 38 equals death. Death is an end. Might be considered to be a new beginning, but for us lot, we see it as the end, an end of our life. The time to die. The time to die. That's a quote from Ecclesiastes, a time to born, a time to die. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1 goes through time to do this, time to do that, time to build, time to demolish. So the time to die equals 133. Again, we're using the placement values unless I were to say otherwise. Point of death equals 133. This is just associations. Mortality. Mortality equals 133. So these are sort of connected together. And when you go pass on, you're put into a coffin and you're stuck in a grave. So we would thought if the coffin fits in the grave, which it usually does, then the word coffin should be equal to a grave, otherwise it won't fit in. So we've got coffin is 53, and that equals grave. You want to check that one out? I thought that was quite an interesting one. C is 3, 15, 6, 6, 9 and 14. You'll get that 53. And you can check those out. If I'm wrong, please comment below. An interesting thing I was discussing with a friend recently was in the Bible, in the Genesis story, we have the name of Adam and Eve, and it says that Eve ate from the tree of knowledge and gave to her husband Adam, and that brought death to the world. But she was named Chava in Hebrew, and Chava in Hebrew is Chava, is based on the word Chai, which means life, because Adam says she's the mother of life. She gives birth. So, but in English, it's Eve. So I said, well, where does Eve come? Normally you find that the English names to biblical characters are very much similar. Avraham in Hebrew, Abraham. Moshe, Moses. Aharon, Aaron. we find the names that are given are basically the same: Joshua, Yehoshua. But Eve has got no relationship to Chava at all. Doesn't look it. We've got a ver in it, and there's Haver, Eve. It's a bit difficult. You can't get away from the ch. So, but what's interesting that Eve equals 5 plus 22 plus 5, which is 32, and that equals life. So in the Hebrew, the actual word has a connection etymologically, chaver and chai, life, but in English it's a Gematria connection. I don't know if the guy who thought of the name Eve knew that. Ish, which is the Hebrew for man, Ish, equals 21, that's placement 21, 31, that's 10, and plus 1 is 32 as well. Life, because man has life. And Adam, his Hebrew name, Adam, equals 18. That's 13, that's 4, and that's 1. 18. And that is the same gematria as Chai in Hebrew. Chai, Chet is 8, Yud is 10. So you've got Adam, a man, also connected to life. Next, we will look at the grave. In Hebrew, the word grave is a kever. That's the Hebrew for grave, a kever. And that has a placement value of 41. Mavet, which is death, 22, 6 and 13, is 41. 13, 19, plus 22 is 41. Then, kever, we've got the placement value as being 41. It has a large value of 251. That's the large value. Remember, I can use the large values for Hebrew. I think I've shown that in a previous lecture before, that we can use the English large values with Hebrew. This is the 19th letter. The placement value for Kuf is 19, and the word 19 in English is 86. So I'm using the English values for the large values for Hebrew. And that is 251. If I add that, I get 292. And I take the word death in English, and I use the large values again. D is 4, the fourth letter, and the word 4 is 60. E is 5, and 5 is 42. A is 1, and 1 is 32, 34, etc. I'll get 292. So that is the large value. This is what we call the whole value. I add the placement and the large value, gives me the whole value. And this equates to the large value of death. So we have another connection coming in. Okay. Not sure what I've got here. Oh, I've got yet another. Oh, this is an interesting one. Yes, if you take Mavet, take this away. Mavet, we said, was death. Let's not use script sometimes, going to the script letters. That's the way, block, Mavet, death. And it would be spelled with the Mem, Vav, Taf. And in Hebrew, if I write those letters, it's Mem, that's how you write the word Mem, and the word Vav, Vav, Aleph, Vav, that's the normal way. You can write it 3 different ways. It could be Vav, 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 Yud, Vav, and Vav, Aleph, Vav. This is the normal way that is written. And Tav, so we got the 3 letters are spelt out as their word. And now I work out the large value of these. This is 13. Final mem can also be 13, the same as the normal mem. 13 is 99, so it's 99 and 99 equals 198. This is Vav is 6, is 52. 1 is 34, 6 is 52, and I'll get 138. And Taf gives me 217. That's the large value. But add all that together, I get 553. If I now go back to Kever, and I work out the normal value, Kuf is 100, Beit is 2, Resh is 200, that's 302, and I add that to my whole value that I've already got, I'll get 590. No, I'm not adding it to this. I'm adding it to to this one here. I'm adding it to the large value. So I'm adding 302 to 251. I'm leaving out the placement value. I get 553, which is that there. So again, I've got another connection. This is using the large value and the normal value. And that gives me Mavet in Hebrew. Okay, just a few more and we'll finish on that. You can see that everything's interrelated. There's this sort of what we could call a matrix of Gematria, even interrelated within the languages of the world. Okay, man, using normal values where m is 40, a is 1, and n is 50, I get 91. It's the decimal system. And the word spirit, because within man lies a spirit, using the placement value, S is 19, P is 16, I get 91. So I've connected man to spirit. If I take the Hebrew for man, which we had before was Ish, okay, and I'm going to use the large value. The Shin or Sin is 21, and the word 21 is 141. 41, Yud is 10, 10 is 39, and 1 is 34. I'll get 214, and that's the large value for Ish. Now, the Hebrew for spirit is Ruach. I'll write them over here. Ruach. So I've connected the English man to spirit in English, and I'm doing the same thing now in the Hebrew. I've got man is Ish, Ruach spelt Reish Vav, that's Chet, Ruach, and the normal value of Ruach is 200 plus 6 plus 8 is 214. That's the normal value. So I've now connected man, Ish in Hebrew, to Ruach in Hebrew, man to spirit, using large value and normal value. Finally, in Hebrew, the word for mortal man, there's actually 4 ways of calling a man. There's Adam, you can call a man as an Adam, Adam Arishon, the first man. There's Ish. There's Gever. Gever means like a man of war, mighty man. Gever from Gevurah means might. And then there's Enosh. He's the name of the son of Seth. Adam had a third son called Seth, and Seth has Enosh. But that name Enosh is also been used to mean mortal man, man that that he's the lowest level of man. In fact, just this human entity of being a man. So that's spelt Aleph, Nun, Vav, Shin, Enosh. That has a normal value of 356 and 1, which is 357. That's the normal value, which people are most familiar with. We take Mavet, death. We saw before that the placement value was 31, and the did we see that before? Yes, we did. But we didn't see the large value. The large value is 316, that's the LV. And if I add those together, I'll get 357, being the whole value. So, and again, I've associated the name for man, the mortal man, to death. A bit pessimistic sort of subject, isn't it? But death isn't that bad. We think it is, but actually it's a transition from who we are now to another state, and then we come back down again. Life isn't just down here once. I remember many years ago I was teaching physics to an Open University student. He was studying physics, his first year degree. It was like an introductory degree, and he was 71 years old. That's what I call optimism. Very interesting person, very nice person. And so I was teaching him some physics, and he used to talk a lot to me about his faith. He was a Catholic, and I remember him saying to me, "We walk this life or this stage just once, and that's it." And I believe that's the Catholic idea, that we're born, and whatever life we have, we have. There are lots of questions on that. I think I discussed with another Catholic once about, a child is born, he dies at 3 years old. What sort of life is that? Doesn't he come back down again? So there is a concept of people that die young, or they come back again. But I'm not sure about that as being an absolute Catholic belief. In Judaism, taught in Kabbalistical and Hasidic circles, there is a strong belief in reincarnation. The Baal Shem Tov talks about it, the Arizal talks about it. It is and accepted amongst probably all Orthodox Jews today, that there's the idea that the soul dies, we come back down again. We live another life. It answers a lot of questions as to why, for example, a child like Mozart at the age of 10 could go to concert and come back and write down all the script of the whole concert, whole music. Why there are geniuses born very brilliant, whatever it is, music or art or mathematics. You find these child prodigies because they are able to use the skills that they've learnt in a previous life in a new life, and that must be something which we all have the capacity of doing. But the idea that we come back down again is because we are growing spiritually. Each stage we come down, we do more, we gain more, we learn more, and we grow in a high level of consciousness, a high level of spirituality, and that's the evolution of mankind, growing up and up and up. I'm not going to dwell on that here, but I'm just going to give you an interesting gematria. The cause of death. The cause of death equals 141, and that's the same as reincarnation. Simply put, the reason why we die is in order to come back down again, to reincarnate and come back down again, and that is the whole purpose of it, because we need to start fresh. Sometimes you mess up your life, or sometimes you're going to get anywhere, and because we get old, we don't necessarily keep the sharpness of our mind and what we've learned during our life, we lose it. So in some ways we're going to learn lessons from this life and have a new fresh start again and learn even more, and therefore the reason why we die is in order to come back again. So that's quite a reasonable connection, a gematria connection. That is the topic for today. The next topic for lecture 18 will be on another book I've written called The Stone with the Seven Eyes, based on the end of chapter 3 of the prophet Zechariah. But anybody interested in this book, it's available on Amazon, it's available direct from me. Anybody emails me, you can get my catalogue, which I've got about 18 books and 11 CDs in it, and with discounts which you won't get on Amazon. So if you're interested, my email address is down below, and please give me a like and please share, and we'll see you for lecture 18 soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye.